What's up, guys? This is Jay at Fantasy Labs. I'm joined here with Justin and John. John, the guy who has computer technical difficulties every time we pod, so we had to delay this one a bit. We're all joined here to break down this April 21st three-game slate. And guys, with the playoffs this season so far, we've only had the Celtics-Hawks game one, the Mavs-Thunder game two as the only close games. Every other game's been horrible. Lots of blowouts. Is there anything you guys are expecting differently on this Thursday slate, or is that too much to ask for at this point?
Yeah, it's a little bit too much to ask for. I think even if we get a close game with that Raptors Pacers, it's going to be near unwatchable anyways. It's Eastern Conference basketball at its finest. And even, we got a taste of Celtics Hawks, a little light at the end of the tunnel. And Avery Bradley probably out for the series. So that series is pretty much a wrap. And yeah, just kind of waiting for this first round to end and, to get some better games going on.
Yeah, we have three games with closer spreads, and the good news is that we saw that the Mavericks can apparently hang with the Thunder. So not saying it's going to be a similar result, but at least we know that all these teams can compete with one another.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go ahead and jump into that game. Speaking of, we got Thunder at Mavs. This is the first slate where we kind of reversed the home and away. So all these teams that were on the road, the first two games are now at home. So I think it changes quite a bit of the dynamics of these games. So the Thunder are 8.5-point favorites in this game. The total is 196.5. Injuries in this game are all on Dallas' side. We got David Lee doubtful with right foot plantar fasciitis, which always wins. JJ Barea doubtful with a strained right groin. We got Darren Williams questionable. It'll be a game time decision likely with the sports hernia. And then we got Dirk with a bruised right knee, expects to play, so he's probable. We can expect him going in this one. So let's start things off kind of talking about the Thunder side in this game. Coming off a very surprising loss at home last game. Dallas is injury riddled. Thunder are healthy. Who are you guys? Where are you kind of starting at with this team? Obviously, we got Russ and Katie both in great spots we want to target, but how are you kind of going about them in cash or tournaments?
Yeah, I think Russ is, probably again the top cash game play of the slate. I don't think you really need to overthink it. He's been really stellar, independent of game flow. Whether they're winning by a lot or it's a close game, I think he's very solid. I'm going to, be at or near 50 DK points there, so I don't think you really need to get cute about it. The interesting play is Katie, only 35.5 DK points over his first two games, had a horrid shooting performance last game, went 7 for 33, only shooting 29.2% in the series, 23.5% from three. So I think, his ownership coming off two really bad games is going to be depressed, and I think this is a great spot for him to bounce back. I do expect the Thunder to come in this game and cover that spread and win fairly convincingly. I don't think we'll kind of see the Mavs be able to kind of pull a rabbit out of the hat like they did last game again. Really, a lot of things went their way, and I don't think that's really repeatable. So I think Durant is probably my favorite tournament play of the slate. Obviously you don't have to really talk about his ceiling, his talent level, and what he's capable of. And I think, he's still been, put up 21-9, 23-5-5. So these lines are like, pretty solid still, kind of on the precipice of kind of what we're expecting. So once that shooting turns around, I think, he has that, 50 DK point, potential like Russ has. So probably my favorite, like I said, my favorite tournament play, given what I think his ownership will be here.
Yeah, I like them a lot for tournaments. For cash, though, it's basically the same slate where we have the options between Iguodala or Paul George as well. So, I don't think you have to have him for cash. He's never a bad option. I just think you have other options to go to in this one. The real one, though, I think is we need to talk about is Cantor, because we saw depressed production in the last game, fewer minutes, that was close. And this one, the Thunder only favored by 8.5 points. We'd obviously still have to hope that it's a close game or it's a blowout. That way Cantor can get more minutes. But I don't know. His production is intriguing.
Yeah, intriguing to say the least. We kind of went into this before the pod for 4 hours, it felt like. But we were under the assumption – pretty obviously that Cantor performs better in blowouts than close games. We broke down the numbers, and he actually performs 4.6 points better in games that are single-digit outcomes. So whether they win by 9, lose by 9 or less, he performs 4.6 points better, which kind of goes against the grain of what you assume going in. So I think more than anything, it shows how wildly inconsistent Cantor is, and there aren't really many ways to kind of break down a good spot for him other than him starting or getting guaranteed minutes. But his minutes fluctuate whether the game is close or not, as we've seen kind of throughout the whole year. Either way, I think you can go at other options in cash and kind of leave Cantor for tournaments.
Yeah, and you calculate the standard deviation too of him, and it was like 9 to 10 around there, and so it kind of highlights his inconsistency. You do have guys like Dwight Howard still, I like quite a bit, and Andrew Bogut, still I'd rather go to him than Cantor. It is a little thinner on this slate. I think you can't really trust Yamahimi too much with his kind of back situation, or Steven Adams is a little thinner as well. So it is really Dwight and Bogut at center position.
Val too.
Oh, of course. I got to say Valanciunas. He's obviously the GOAT.
Yeah.
And we'll get into him a little later in terms of like what we kind of expect from him and the Pacers defense this game. I think he's just beasted the first two.
Absolutely. And I think one guy we can't forget who often gets overlooked is Serge Ibaka. Definitely the makeup of more of a tournament player pretty much throughout the entire season. This is the playoffs now. They kind of need his production a bit more at this point. He is 5,900, power forward's thin overall. With such a small slate, I tend to look at guys where I otherwise wouldn't in cash games now. But I kind of like the price point for Ibaka playing, averaging over 30 minutes in these first 2 games and putting up consistent production. Obviously, you still have the floor that's there, but there aren't too many players really that you can realistically afford that don't have some kind of risk. So I think Ibaka is in the mix, but I'll probably end up having like Draymond and someone cheaper instead.
Patrick Patterson.
Yeah, P-Pat. Yeah, exactly. And before we move on to the Mavs, Durant's 7 for 33 shooting. Would you say that's slightly better than your shooting at the DK Live final on Papa Shot?
Oh, goodness!
I witnessed that live. It was Durant had a much better night than Justin. Much.
Yeah, well, we'll replicate that sometime.
I'm gonna chalk that up to the cocktails.
Okay, that's fair. We all get one of those calls. So, all right, let's keep it moving. Let's go on the Mavs side. Playing at home, 8.5-point dogs. Like Justin talked about, I'm not really expecting this one to be super close or anything, but I don't think it really matters too much with some of these guys. They are thin. They have some guys who are doubtful. David Lee and JJ Barea. Darren is clearly not healthy. I think you can kind of write him off as a play. We got Dirk, who's been healthy. He's probable, but he hasn't looked great as well. So
yeah, and he's dealing with that bruised right knee now that obviously he suffered during Game 2. That will even further kind of limit his appeal. He's been struggling big time as is in this series already, averaging 22.5 DK points. In this series so far, and with that knee injury on top, I'm not touching him in cash. I'm not touching him in tournaments. I'm just completely off Dirk in the spot. I don't think you can really look at anybody. I think if like Barea is out, but I do think Barea will try to play. I think this is like a daring where Barea is listed as doubtful, but he's probably going to end up playing. But if Barea does sit out, maybe some Raymond Felton.
Yeah. Felton's the guy I'm looking at to get exposure on this team with Darren limited, Felton playing huge minutes. He's kind of, the only guy I want. Wes is not doing well. He did obviously have a great defensive game last game, and I think they need to continue relying on his defense a bit more. So I don't like his upside in terms of his offense being limited because he's focused so much on defense. So you look at a lot of these guys, the front court is a mess as it has been over the past month and a half. So I think Felton's really the only guy you kind of want to look at here.
Yeah, and that's the one I'm looking at, obviously, because although we don't expect this game to be closer, he's still locked into his minutes. So, he has to play point guard with them already being limited availability. He has to play off-ball guard. He has to play 3 in some lineups. I'm still fine with him just for his minutes. I'd roll him in cash if Bray is out. I'm okay with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got a lot of places to save that you need to, and Felton opens up a lot of salary relief. So yeah, I think you look at him really, really hard on this slate. 4,700 on DK, 5,300 on FanDuel. So with
I mean,
guards limited.
Yeah, he's the only healthy guard that they have right now in that backcourt, and I'm not including Wesley Matthews because he's been playing more like three at times. But you got Darren dealing with that sports hernia, Devin Harris dealing with that shoulder injury, and then Barea with that groin. So he's kind of the only healthy guy and they have to lean on him pretty heavily.
Yeah, so overall, I would probably say this is what your guys' least favorite or favorite team to kind of fade overall, looking at the slate, the 6 teams. Dallas is probably at the bottom. So yeah, we're kind of off most of these guys. So let's move on to the next game. We got the Raptors at Pacers. Raptors are favored by 1.5, so really close game. Low total, 193.5. Injuries in this game. The Raptors, Terrence Ross is questionable. Injury to his head. It wasn't a concussion, I don't think.
No, they evaluated him, and I don't think it is. He's still in the protocol technically, so he has to clear some hurdles. But he was shooting on Wednesday, and it looked promising that he'd be able to be available to play Thursday.
Okay, cool. All right, and then on the Pacers side, we got Yamahimi questionable with that sprained lower back that took him out of last game early, and then Monte Ellis, I believe, skipped practice for personal. We can expect him to play in this one for sure. So let's start on the Raptors side, implied at 97.5 points. We've broken down Toronto pretty deep twice already. What are you guys kind of looking at difference-wise? Look, a lot of these prices are the same. We did see their rotation be a bit better last game than it was in game 1. We got Patrick Patterson over 30 minutes. Finally, I think he's a guy we want to look at pretty hard at just 3,400 on DraftKings, 3,900 on FanDuel at a thin power forward position, especially after Draymond Green. So I think he's a guy I'm definitely looking at strongly here. Who else do you guys who's on your radar for cash and tournaments?
Yeah, if Terrence Ross misses, I think we're not getting normal pals, as Jay would say, in the playoffs. The rotation clearly goes to Patrick Patterson in that absence. We thought we would see Kojo more, but apparently that's not happening either. He's going to stay in that 24 to 27 minute allotment. So I think you said you're looking for cheaper options at power forward. Like Patrick Patterson, certainly if Ross is out, then that's an option right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's become blatantly obvious that he is kind of I wouldn't say their best player, but among their most valuable for sure. And the plus minus with him on the court versus off really bears that out. They're so much better with him on there, and his defense, especially, I think, one way they can, their spacing, especially with like Skull out there, is so bad. Where I think one counter that the Pacers can make to kind of limit Valanciunas a little bit is they've been doing this. It's just to leave Scola out there on the perimeter unguarded and then kind of sag in a little bit on Val. So you put P-Pad out there, it really forces them to make a tough decision, whether you double down on Val or have to or kind of leave P-Pad open. He's very capable a shooter from long twos, from threes. So I think P-Pad really is the key to the Raptors at this point. It's really up to Casey to give him that 30 plus minutes that he deserves. And I think when he does that, I think they shouldn't have too much of an issue winning the series. But going back to this team, I think there's really 4 clear plays I'm looking at here. Valanciunas, Kyle Lowry, Patrick Patterson, and Corey Joseph. It's been kind of the same 4 from the start of the series to now. They've been the most consistent so far. Patterson, best salary relief play. I don't mind some Corey Joseph. I still think he's out there. He's been been very aggressive, has looked very good so far. And even though he has been kind of limited to 24 to 27 minutes, like John said, I still at his price point think he is still a pretty profitable punt play. And looking at Valanciunas, I don't think you have to overthink this yet. We'll kind of see what the Pacers will do. I think there's a couple things that can look at to kind of give Valanciunas different looks and kind of look to contain him. But the way he's going right now, he's just gobbling up rebounds and just been totally unstoppable. And I don't know. I don't know what they want to do. If they want to, focus on Val, then that kind of opens up the possibility that they start getting DeMar DeRozan going, which is not ideal given how disappointing he's been to this point.
Yeah, I think DeRozan's a guy. We've seen 2 games where he's just gotten eaten up. Really, offensively, he's not getting it together. So I think at his price, kind of on a slate where you want to afford these top guys, and we have the clear value. So there's really no need for someone like DeRozan at his price point. So yeah, I think he's a thin tournament play at best. And then Val and Patterson are my 2 cash plays from this team. Lowry's more of a tournament play for me. And I don't mind Corey Joseph. I think in the off chance that Curry's status changes to questionable and you just don't really want to risk Livingston in that late game, then maybe Corey Joseph is a decent pivot in cash games on early lock sites.
Yeah.
Are we being too thin on DeRozan? What do you think about him as a Darth tournament option here? Are we expecting him to stay this quiet like throughout the series, or is he going to have a game coming up?
Paul George is a great defender. I don't see DeRozan. I think they're doing a great job of limiting his free throw attempts, which is a huge part of his game, and for him to kind of rack up more points. So I think it's a little thin. I don't like the spot. I guess, on this such a small slate, ways to get contrarian. He's one of them because I think people are looking at the last 2 games and just immediately writing him off. But I think it's for good reason. So he's not one of my favorite tournament plays. Yeah, I don't mind exposure to him, but I'm going to keep it limited.
It seems crazy to say that his upside might be limited because we've seen him obviously go off for 50-point games and whatnot in the regular season. But just like rostering him right now, isn't it as a contrarian option? I just don't think the upside's there for him right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, given this total, and this kind of pace and the way that we kind of expect this game to play out, yeah. It might be a 25-point game, but the supporting stats will be pretty lacking. So kind of have to wonder what you're really paying for there.
Agree. So yeah, our 2 favorites of the Raptors are definitely Patterson for his cheap price and increasing minutes, and then Valanciunas, who's just been a beast lately, and they're pretty clearly, I think, going to continue feeding him quite a bit. So let's move on to the Pacers, their opponent. Close game, close spread. Pacers at home this time. I believe Monte has some pretty strong home-away splits for most of his career, really. He actually has been playing pretty well, putting up over 30 DK points. He's a pretty cheap price. I think at a thin shooting guard position, he's definitely overlooked, I think, a bit on this slate. So I don't mind. I like him a lot as a tournament play, especially at that price point. Shooting guard position overall, I think you have some spots you can mix and match. I don't mind him in cash, Monte. I think some people will go him. And then, we got Paul George, kind of the Paul George or Kevin Durant as small forward number 1 on your team. Where are you guys kind of leaning with Paul George?
Yeah, I'd probably go PG. Durant so far has been so underwhelming, and PG definitely took a step back, obviously, from his stellar Game 1 performance, but it was still really solid overall line, and he scored 28 points. And I think the DeMar Carroll factor has been a bit overblown, where people are thinking he's the key to the series and he's going to turn things around, when he started last game and only played 20 minutes. So he's clearly still really limited.
Not healthy.
Yeah, it's not the DeMar Carroll that we kind of come to expect. The Bulldog from his Hawks days, he's not that player. So I'm still very comfortable with PG, and I think he's pretty easily the best option at small forward on both sides.
Yeah, as I stated with Durant, you have options, and I think Paul George is the other option. And in cash, I would absolutely go George over Durant, just because you have to focus on the potential blowout also with the Thunder Mavs. So even if he doesn't mirror his play, which I don't expect him to produce similar results, the floor is still safe enough where he's a terrific cash option at small forward.
Yeah, I agree. So kind of looking at his team, the first 2 games, Paul George has commanded an incredibly high usage rate in both games. He's taking over. This is his team, the playoffs, kind of what we expect from him. But outside of Monte, who's been quietly producing, is there anybody else kind of on this team that's worth consideration?
Yeah, I really like Miles Turner in tournaments. I expect, I touched on Jan Mahimni. I think he's going to be pretty limited in this one. And I don't expect him to play a lot of minutes. And I think Miles Turner can kind of be that one of those different looks that they give to Valanciunas, to kind of pull him from the perimeter, to pull him to the perimeter away from the basket a little bit on defense. And it just kind of gives him a different looks. You kind of sacrifice a little bit on the glass, him playing center, but you kind of have to give and take a little bit here with Val with the way he's going, just kind of mix things up a little bit. So I do think Turner, we kind of seen his appeal. His ceiling, throughout the season, he has that blocks potential. I obviously tournaments only, but I do like him quite a bit in tournaments as a under the radar guy that no one's really looking at, whose average is 19.4 DK points in those two games, who can give you a ceiling of close to 30.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I like Turner if he starts at center. At the same time, though, and I don't have the exact numbers on me because I'm a professional, but like one of my favorite trends to exploit, and a lot of people's in the middle of the season, was when Turner starts at center, you basically start the opposing center because he's just so bad at the five defensively. And if that's the case, then obviously, I know we're talking about the Pacers here, but Val is even in higher regards than.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's pretty clearly the top play at the position anyways, but yeah, you're right. We'll kind of check on Mahimi's status throughout the day. And either way, I think, there's value for Miles Turner even off the bench because Mahimi will be limited. And then especially if Mahimi is ruled out, I think Miles Turner will carry pretty heavy ownership.
I mean, you kind of have to put it in the context of the slate. I don't love Miles. If this was like an 8-game slate, then there's no way I would tell Miles Turner to tournament. But if we kind of look up and down the slate, like we're ignoring the Mavs. OKC's so super dry with KD, Durant, and Ibaka and Cantor. You kind of have to kind of look outside the box a little for some upside.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I agree. I think Miles is the clear tournament play, and then you can go Paul George in cash. And I think Monte's a kind of in-betweener. I don't mind him in either format or both. So
I would go Patterson over cash over Turner, too. That's just me. I don't know about y'all.
No, yeah, for sure.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the last game. The Warriors at Rockets. Warriors are only favored by 5. There's a minor player, I think, who might not play, and that's probably why the line's only 5. The total is 215.5. So obviously the big injury of this entire slate, Steph Curry, that sprained right ankle, he's considered doubtful to play in this one. We'll see if that changes throughout the day. Where are you kind of leaning on that, Justin?
I think they'll hold him out. I think it's pretty clear. Even Steph admitted on Wednesday that he was still feeling pain, that if they were playing on Wednesday, he wouldn't have been able to go. And, even if he's starting to feel better on Thursday, there's really no reason to risk the aggravation. I think, I don't think they're really scared of losing the series at all. And obviously with the goal is the end prize, which is winning the title. And they'll need a fully healthy Steph to even have a real shot at that.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, for this pod's purpose, at least at this time, let's assume he's going to miss this game. So kind of starting off on the Warriors side, I think you're going to see, incredibly high ownership for Sean Livingston at just 3,700 on FanDuel, 4,100 on DK. I think he's a clear-cut cash play on both sites, probably the top value of the slate. We got Andre Iguodala, who we like anyways, but with Curry out, I think he's another kind of clear-cut cash play. So, you have these easy guys. You have Draymond, even Clay. Those are probably, 4 guys that I'm trying to go in cash. You can't play 5, unfortunately. So you're going to have to leave Bogut perhaps out in favor of Valanciunas. I think the other guys with their respective positions, you kind of got to look at ahead of Bogut. But I do think 4 of these guys, assuming Curry is out, is kind of the right play on this slate.
Yeah, I totally agree. And given this one projects to be a close game, we can expect these guys to play a heavy allotment of minutes. Clay, I've never been a big fan of, but with Steph out, he definitely has to step up and take a really big offensive role, whether it be really forced. I think he was, I believe it was at the start of the third quarter or something. He was just jacking up shots where it totally disrupted the flow of the offense. But given kind of the alternatives, they really desperately lack a guy who can really create his own shot, especially with Iggy and Livingston and Bogut so heavily involved in the offense. I like Livingston quite a bit. He only played 29 minutes in the last game in that start, but I think a lot of that was attributed to him coming off an illness. He missed practice the day before with the illness, and coming in, Kerr said he wouldn't play Livingston over 30 minutes because of that. I think given the time he has to kind of recover from that and head in this game a little bit more 100%, then we can see 30 plus minutes and even better shot for Livingston to kind of crush value here. Given you can only play 4, I don't think you have to look at Barnes at all. Kind of just stick with the chalk, and that's about it.
Agree. It's basically all chalk. Draymond Green, as I always get yelled at for mispronouncing that name. Draymond Green, he is obviously the top option. Clay as well, cash, and then with Iggy's minutes basically guaranteed with Curry, as we are assuming is out. 3,900 is not enough, obviously, to keep you away from him in cash. So it's pretty plain and simple for the Warriors.
Yeah, all right. So since this is so easy, this isn't going to get over anyone's head with who the value plays are. Everyone's going to start their lineups with Sean Livingston. You think there's a good chance of it being a successful strategy to fade him in tournaments, maybe go Russ and Lowry or kind of pay up at point guard as a contrarian move and kind of fade Livingston?
Personally, I think so because his upside, he doesn't offer what those other guys offer. He's safe in his floor, but just the actual upside for tournaments isn't there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Livingston, and I wouldn't even be against fading Iguodala. I like him quite a bit, but the ceiling issue is still the same with him. He just doesn't offer. I know those guys did really well last game. Iggy finished with 34 and Livingston with 31, which kind of doesn't go along with my point quite a bit. But given this is at Houston, and I don't those guys aren't the most reliable and consistent from game to game, and they have shown some floors issues before when given 30 plus minutes. I think it definitely makes sense. And going from Iggy to Durant, for example, I think is a really interesting play. Going from Livingston to Lowry, like Jay Sean said, I think is really interesting and gives you really unique roster construction because you kind of have to force to save at other spots, and your roster will be so different from what everybody else's will look like.
Yeah, completely agree. Livingston, I expect over 75% ownership, so I am on the side of fading him in tournaments, getting a bit contrarian.
I don't think you want to fade Draymond at all, though, because power forward is thin already, and you're not going to Dirk at all.
Yeah, the other guys don't have the upside that Draymond does.
Yeah, and obviously shooting guards are weak too, so I'd be very hard pressed to go fade Clay either.
Agree. All right, well, let's talk about the last team, the Rockets. They are implied to score 100 points. This is only a 5-point spread, so I think there's a lot of value here still. Starting at the top, obviously, we got Harden, who I think's a pretty solid play on this slate. Maybe difficult to afford in cash if you kind of prioritize and get Russ in there, and maybe even go KD as well, kind of expecting a bounce-back game. Whether you go Paul George, still think it'll be a bit difficult for Harden. I think, do you remember his ownership last game? It was relatively high. I want to say 45% in cash.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So I think, I think he's like a borderline cash play. It's not someone I'm starting my lineup with, but I think he's a fine cash play, and I think he's a great tournament play. And then we got Dwight, who continues to be underpriced on DraftKings. I like quite a bit there. And then after that, it's kind of pretty thin, even with them implied at 100 points.
Yeah, I do like this spot for Houston, and I have talked, in previous pods about wanting to get more of a piece of Houston supporting players in games 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. And here we are in games 3 and 4 at Houston, close spread, still a high total at 100.3. I obviously like Harden and Dwight quite a bit. I think Dwight will be a really good tournament option to come off Val. Everybody's going to be on Valanciunas, obviously. Mm-hmm. Dwight's still really solid at his price, 34.4 DK points this series so far. I don't mind some Pat Beverly, 29 DK points last game. I think in game 3 we should expect more of what he did in game 2 than what he did in game 1, where he was clearly distracted by trying to get in Steph's head and just didn't care about what was going on in the court at all. I think, given this kind of how this game shapes up, no Steph, it gets a little sloppier perhaps. And, I do like the spot for Beverly a little bit.
Yeah, I think they have really good spots for the surrounding players. The issue is the actual rotation for the surrounding players, because we thought we'd see more Capella and Dwight, and Capella then went on to play 6 minutes. And I thought we would see a lot more KJ McDaniels, and he basically stopped at in and out on the way to the game and didn't show up at all. And then I thought they'd go to Michael Beasley early and often as well, and he only played 12 minutes. Instead, they played Jason Terry for some unknown reason for 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So, it's so hard, almost impossible to pick the surrounding players around the obvious Harden, Dwight, and Beverly. So I do like Beverly, but everyone else I don't even think I'd consider in this spot.
You gotta have some tournament exposure, though. I'd be fine throwing out some tournament teams with guys like
I want some Ariza personally.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was just about to say Ariza. I think obviously nobody's gonna be on him. He's been absolutely terrible, just breaking wide open threes. He had so many at game 2 I was watching, even wide open corners, just missing all of them. He's so off right now. Coming back home, I think this is a decent bounce back spot. He's gonna have a good game.
Yeah,
a game 3 or game 4, it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't consider him like the surrounding role player though. Like, he's obviously logging to his minutes. He's obviously a star for them. He's obviously important, so he's going to play the minutes, and he absolutely will be overlooked. I don't even care about his production, to be honest.
Did you just call Ariza a star? Is this Rick Carlisle coming again with Deion Waiters? He is not a star.
For the Rockets,
idolizing
he's a star.
the coach.
For the Rockets,
yeah, all right, that might be true. But Michael Beasley was a star for them for 3 weeks.
Michael Beasley's the GOAT. He's not a star. He's the best. But no, given his minutes, he's definitely going to be overlooked. I'm certainly fine with him. Just all the guys coming off the bench like Jason Terry and whatnot, obviously those are the ones I'm talking about that I would like exposure to, but I have to stay away.
Give me some small Josh Smith shares too. I think he's going to have a game coming.
I think so.
Some absurd 5 or 6 threes. A little throwback to his series last year against the Mavs.
Josh Smith and Rick Carlisle are always good for one win.
Yeah, that's true. Do you think KJ McDaniels got his in and out animal style?
You got to go. Hold on, what is it? I was telling Justin the order the other day. You got to get the chopped green chili.
Oh my God! You told me some healthy garbage. I would never
chopped green chilies and protein style, where they do a lettuce wrap instead of a burger.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I'm going in and out, getting the most unhealthy garbage thing on the menu. Give me the animal style. Give me the large chocolate shake. Give me everything.
Yep. And then follow it up with a hot sauce tuna, and that's your day. That's your meal planned right there.
That's your enema, the hot sauce tuna, just the cleanse. Just want to vomit everything up.
Yeah. Protein style, though. Trust me, protein style.
I think the Rockets kind of have a lot in common with In-N-Out. Just the makeup of their team, the upside, the downside, kind of the garbage makes you feel really bad watching them. So I think there's value on the Rockets. I think a lot of people are going to overlook. I think probably my favorite tournament play will be Trevor Ariza, especially at a position where no one's really going to be looking at that price range. It's going to be Iguodala and either Paul George or Durant possibly. I think at 5,900 on FanDuel, 5,700 on DraftKings, no one's going to be really looking there. So I think that's one way to really get contrarian on the slate. And I agree. I think he has a big game in him for this series. Coming back home, he's been bad. He's still kind of produced to the point where it's not awful. So I think he has upside. We've seen it a lot with him this season. And then I agree on Beverly. I think will be overlooked as well. And then you got your usuals with Harden and Dwight. So I'm probably higher on the Rockets than I would usually be in this spot. So I like targeting a few of these guys in a game that has such a higher total than the other two especially. So I think this slate shapes up to be quite a really good tournament slate with some of these pivots because cash lineups are going to be very, very chalky.
Agreed.
All right, guys, closes up the pod. We'll probably get you another pod. I guess we're all going to be together this weekend, so let's do another pod, maybe live pod.
Yeah, let's do it.
But it'll be a nod to San Diego whenever we're struggling to get up and riding quick.
Yeah, I mean, John, me and Justin won't be able to fit in the screen.
Maybe I'll actually pod this time and not do my baseball impression in the background.
Nah, you can still do that. That was pretty awesome. But all right, guys, yeah, good luck on this slate though. I think it's a good slate to play a little bit of cash because you kind of have the chalk, so I think it's a bit easier. You just kind of play those guys who fade the chalk and cash, and then you play the tournaments, fade the chalk and tournaments. It's a pretty simple strategy. So either way, I think you're looking good. We'll go with you guys next time for a pod, and good luck.
Good luck, guys.